Alright, this is Misha, and we're kind of wrapping up our Klingon battle cruisers. We looked at the D5 from the 22nd century, the D7 Katinga from the 23rd, and of course the Vorcha from the 24th. And now we're going to wrap things up with the Negh'var from the very late well, not very, but last quarter of the 24th and well into the 25th. This has been seen in Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. At least variants of it have. Really, this is technically a heavy battle cruiser. It's the largest standard Klingon ship we've seen, where it 682 meters for this variant, the Negh'var. However, the first time we saw this was in All Good Things, the final episode of Next Generation, where a couple of these beat the crap out of the USS Pasteur and gave the Enterprise a run for its money. Those are referred to as the Vadle or Vadli class, and they're really the prototype of this. That was the first model, the Vadli. Had more wings, spikes, protrusions. It also lacked weapon pods on the bottom. So it was kind of a more spiky, spindly version. And because of the spikes, it was actually a little bit longer, about 710 meters. Just because of the spikes. But that episode took place in the future. So chronologically, the first time we see this variant is this ship here, the IKS Imperial Klingon ship, Negh'var, which was Chancellor Gowron's ship in the opening episode of Season 4 of Deep Space Nine, aka the one Worf comes in. We see this uncloak, and it specifically said it's the Negh'var, the new flagship, meaning it was probably constructed around 2370 to 2372. Like I said in the Vorcha video, it was only introduced around 2365, maybe a little earlier, but then it was already replaced by the Negh'var. And this would remain the Chancellor's flagship throughout Deep Space Nine and, of course, the Dominion War. Now, just before I forget, in Voyager, this appears in the last episode of it, Endgame, is yet another variant. I don't know its name, where it's again a little bit altered, and it takes on little Harry Kim's USS Rhode Island. And somehow a Nova-class ship single shots a Negh'var type ship. I don't know about that. But then again, this is Voyager. It's one of those popcorn shows. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a forerunner of the JJ movies. Fun, enjoyable, good acting. Just don't think too deeply sometimes. You'll hurt your brain. Anyway, to the Prime, the General Negh'var here. It was the command ship for the Chancellor. And that's what these were really used for. They were massive ships. You know, the most conservative crew count I could find was 1,800 plus troops. That seems like a lot of people, but this is Klingon we're talking about. I mean, this thing is 3 times the length of a D7, and that thing had at least 400 on board, so who might argue? I mean, I will argue, but who am I to do it? That said, we have the very typical Klingon shapes. We've got the raised engineering hull that's extended in the back. We've got the engines coming out. Although there's not, the wing areas are very horizontal. There's no real sweep to them. And the nacelles are actually quite beefy, if you see. The front head, sometimes called the Cobra head, it's very large. It actually has a cannon, a very large kind of orbital bombardment disruptor cannon, plus multiple other smaller disruptor cannons and beam. There are two large disruptor banks on the bottom, kind of in pods. And of course we have tons of photon torpedoes and the like. So a ship kind of set up for heavy bombardment. These are made as command ships, as I said, also sector ships, or to command fleet groups or planetary defense groups. Yeah, basically a centralized ship. A true battleship versus a cruiser, I guess, but there you go. It's said that these are less maneuverable and had a lower top warp than a Vorcha, which we knew was a pretty maneuverable and fast ship. I mean, it's got an attack cruiser after all. I'm sure these were still respectably fast. They did have a very modern, up-to-date cloak, on the other hand, and very powerful shielding, so they had that going for them. On the other hand, these were time-consuming and expensive to build. So while they would actually build Negh'var class ships for a number of years, if not even a number of decades, we know they were still building them into the 25th century, they just didn't make that many. They didn't mass produce them. So it was kind of a specialty ship, and at the same time it was kind of a status symbol for high-ranking generals and political figures. So it really was kind of a battleship type, more symbol than actual thing, although it was a powerful ship for sure. And this is the most modern Klingon ship, whichever variation or guise you see, that we know of in the Prime timeline. So what about this Eagle Moss model? This is one I was really excited to get, and frankly, I'm not really disappointed by it, but I'm kind of in the minority. A lot of people aren't happy with this ship. This one came out right before issue 50. I think it was around 46, 47. I don't memorize them. So a couple of years into the collection. And a lot of people kind of complain about it being a little dull in the details. Also, there's some kind of hollow areas, which I do find weird. There are kind of these little hollow areas at the back of the nacelles and back here. That is an odd one. That's a very bizarre choice. I'm sure there's a production reason why they did it, because it's not something I bet they did lightly. But the model feels good. We've got the cannon in the front, we've got the pods below. This middle section is metal. It's actually heavier than I thought. In fact, believe it or not, a good chunk of this head, the Cobra's head, is metal, which impressed me. I think this might be one of those situations, guys, where me being blind is actually an asset. Maybe I can't see its deficiencies and just enjoy it for what it is, because I know there just aren't many Negh'var models out there. Now, what would have been kind of cool is that they had done this one as a special. I think it would have looked really good as a special, and it would have given more size. But on the other hand, of course, it would have doubled the price. So I'm happy we have it. If they ever do a new version in the future, that'd be great. But I think what we got isn't half bad. It's definitely not the weakest ship of the collection, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Then again, I kind of like this ship. It's just different. If you can tell, now in universe, this is much larger than a Vorcha. But in reality, they really took a Vorcha model and heavily upgraded it and modified it to make a Negh'var. You can still see kind of the lines of the Vorcha in this model, but it's altered enough that it's not bad. It's not really a kit bash. It's got enough new components and detailing that it only is kind of inspired by the previous ship. And there you have it, folks. The Klingon battlecruisers. You can also check out my look at the various birds of prey in the same manner. And if Eagle Moss releases more of these, I'm sure I'll do a video. And again, I do have a video on the mysterious D6, so you can check the playlist to figure that out. Well, if you could, like, share, and subscribe. Any questions or comments? Welcome on below as always. And for the last time in this little series, this is Misha Jay.